Welcome. Today we're going beneath the 99%. We're going to go beneath the surface. Instead of your megaphone sparking out your one story, we're going to send you on a deep dive to listen to everybody else's story in your organization. Now, here's the basic model. GrowthOD's 7Bs of consulting organizations and coaching people in them. So there's bets and before, beyond, becoming, between, being, and beneath. Today we're going beneath. You can go to growthod.org and see a clickable chart that'll explain this whole thing. Today it's about the beneath. Well, it turns out that 99% of what you need to be concerned about in organizational development as a coach, a consultant, or as a CEO is stop barking your hero's tail and go down below the surface and listen to all the stories. We recommend story circles to get at this. There's something called a story filter, and it's filtering out 99% of what's interesting and important about coaching and consulting and leading and training in organizations. So how do you recover the 99% that's being filtered out, right? That's what we have to talk about today. And there's a way to do it. One idea is that there's one truth and you know it in your hero's tale or your consulting tale, coaching tale, and you got the truth and everybody else does not. So leaders stand on the mountaintop or they hit the top of their iceberg and they shout out through a megaphone what their big story is. Now, today we're going to trade capes for wetsuits. And it's a big shift we're going to make because we're going to do together listening and we're going to advise you as leaders, coaches, consultants to trade in your cape for a wetsuit. The old way is you stand there with a megaphone, right? And you bark out the story. Everybody has to sign on to it, be you a trainer, a coach, a consultant, or an executive, and that becomes the story. But another way to do it is to put on your wetsuit and go beneath. Go beneath. And you can use the Perview methodology. It's the first pillar of coaching with GrowthOD. And you characterize people at their best. You externalize them into some character. Rather than blaming the people, you talk about the character, like head in the sand or whatever it is. Or Mr. Megaphone. That's a good one. You sympathize with Mr. Megaphone, why he or she is doing that. And then you say, what are the consequences? Well, I got a lot of resistance to my ideas. Well, because I get no input. So you strategize. How about getting input? So you ask them to think about 5 to 7 little while moments in their life where they did get input and it kind of turned out all right. So they run through that. They get 2 or 3. Oh, yeah, I had a big event and I got some input from my management team. Or I was a coach and I got input from other coaches. So you take those little wow moments and you ask them, rehistoricize your history, focusing just on those little wow moments, the different times when you did invite other people and do together listening. And then you had a together telling instead of a solo telling. And that sets you up now to have that new story identified as a theme. And now you publicize it as the new story of the future, get a support group around it. Those are the 7 steps we call the Perview framework. So the Perview framework, 7-step process, we find that there's many competing hidden stories when we start to listen to them. So instead of the megaphone with one hero, one tale, one truth, in GrowthOD, we go way beneath. We dive down beneath the surface. Say it's an iceberg. We go down to where the main action, the main bulk of the iceberg is. So it's pretty simple, really. Trade in your megaphone, start listening to a whole bunch of stories, the unheard stories, the untold stories, and you will get at the 99% that's being filtered out when you're in the hero's tale kind of leadership, coaching, or consulting. So at GrowthOD, we try to involve people, right? Instead of the megaphone that produces widespread fear, fear that you won't be one of those managing the narrative or you won't be citing the narrative in a way that's going to keep your job. I know I did consulting with a big bank here that has a stagecoach on it, and they fired everybody after pretty much 85% after the first month, or they left because they couldn't tote the big story, the single megaphone story, and they kept talking about the old days of the bank. So let's look at this iceberg here and what's below. So in another coaching example, I did executive coaching and I also did focus groups with suppliers and with vendors and with customers. So the suppliers, vendors were kind of squawking about what's going on with the salespeople, et cetera. And, the CEO at that time just said, oh, they're a bunch of prima donnas, those salespeople. But then put the megaphones away and you started to listen to all the different icebergs that the vendors and customers were telling us in our coaching and consulting. And they said, oh, there's an instability in this company. I remember that focus group well because the executives were behind the one-way mirror and they said, oh, God, well, we didn't know they knew this. They have been lots of battles. They had, I think, 6 different CEOs within 3 years. And each time there was a new CEO, all the vendors, all the customers had to make new relationships with that CEO and what was coming out of the megaphone. So GrowthOD is training CEOs, coaches, and consulting and going beneath, take off that crown, ditch the megaphone, start doing your work one brick at a time, and tap into the reality. Tap into that 99% that you're missing that's being filtered out. Now, some people believe that they have the single truth and they're going to bark it out no matter what. Now, in the Perview coaching, one of the different methodologies, we say, well, let's externalize that into a character like Mr. Megaphone. Let's sympathize with why you're Mr. Megaphone. Everybody has to hear my orders or it gets confusing. And then revise. Well, what are the consequences? With a lot of resistance to change, people down there going in different directions. They don't know why we're doing things. They're not really on board. The millennials are jumping ship. So we kind of look at these 3 things next. Strategize with a bunch of little wow moments of when you did allow participation and dropped the megaphone and put on your diving mask and went down to listen to other people's stories beside your own. Then rehistoricize, tell that history with just the little wow moments and publicize not my story, but our story. And that makes the huge difference. So when it becomes our story and our symphony, you've moved from solo to orchestra. And this is where you want to be because you got less resistance to change, you got more involvement, more motivation, more people on board, right? And you're going to find that things are going to go a lot better. So you can have that solo violin that you're playing, and that can be a really cool song, but maybe you want to try a different kind of expression and become an orchestra, become a band with different instruments in the band. Here we see the horn and the drum, right? So add some other instruments to your violin, get some more participants so that you're doing together listening and together telling. So, what symphony is waiting to be heard in your organization? That's the big question we want to present to you today. I hope you found this enjoyable. And my name is David Bogie, and I am one of the people responsible for these different pillars, the purview, the glow, the seam, the souls, the AAM. I work a lot with the purview. And check us out at growthod.org. All the coaching I do and some of the other people, the colleagues, well, we'll coach you as executives and we'll coach you as coaches and consultants. And then we'll use that money, put it in the 501c3 called Perview, and then we will do coaching for free to veterans and their family members because we think these same issues that we've talked about today can really help the veterans and their family member. I know it from experience. So thank you very much, and we appreciate you. And I'm going to stop now.